Welcome to another live edition of Blacklisted Radio. It's the 22nd day of November 2014. My name is Doug Owen. I am the senior editor of blacklistednews.com. You can leave me voicemails and text me 24/7, 365 at 512-222-3067. And I want to thank the gentleman, I think it was a gentleman, that responded this week and said that he liked the commentary about the hovercrafts that you can get in the back of comic books and Boys Life magazine, and mentioned the fact that with the new rig, with the new technology we're using to do the show, it was pretty harsh on the S's. So hopefully we have de-S'd a little bit here on the program. Thank you for being part of it. You can join us live Saturday morning at blacklistedradio.com. There's a chat room there, and we have a festive group of people hanging out and talking about the issues of the day, some of the big things that, of course, everybody's waiting for. The decision from the grand jury in Ferguson, Missouri. It's become quite a show. It's a spectacle. There are a lot of things to glean from what's happening there. And, of course, the human tragedy, the victim that is the general population that feels so compelled to be at the feet of the police state, basically doing this, going out there, protesting, trying to bring attention to the absolute misjustices of the state. And when it comes to the police and the state of emergency that is now in Ferguson, Missouri, it's pretty evident that things were already out of control. Very little of this, I think, ultimately has anything to do with the killing of Michael Brown, and has a lot more to do with people being destitute, people seeing no real way to affect change, to have political change, and to be able to hold government accountable. And that's what people are so upset about. And we're going to see how they react to the announcement, whether or not the police officer is indicted, or the grand jury deems that he should be indicted. The political, obviously, whatever political solution, legal solution comes out of these investigations, and whatever lays to bear, I don't think ultimately the people are going to be that thrilled with the outcome. I mean, paying off the Michael Brown family, giving them millions of dollars, attention, and front row alongside Reverend Al Sharpton, and he has the old Rev. We have to go back to the classics here. And this is what he's all about. I say that as I reach for the slider. And we will much about that. We must, and we will much about that be committed. I might just stop playing that sounder because it just makes me sad that this guy has been able to put together 25 cities that are in protest for what is happening in Ferguson, Missouri. I mean, the injustices, or the misjustices I said earlier, the injustices that are so evident, that are across this country, happening on a daily basis, I think, there's plenty of them that are really outweigh what has happened here. I was looking at some of these stories from around the web with one police officer. Where was this at? I saw it on the Free Thought Project. They focus a lot on the police state. I just want to bring it up, but the guy enslaved his girlfriend, and there it is. Cop receives 21 months in prison, jail, for pleading guilty to enslaving his teen wife into prostitution. This is the kind of police officers you're going to find in Baltimore, Maryland, maybe. Hopefully not, if you're pulled over. You never know. But this is just one of hundreds of examples I've seen over the last few weeks of police doing, really, really, really heinous things to people. And You don't have people around the country protesting like you do in Ferguson, Missouri. So it's the destitution, of course, poverty, the lack of any kind of hope for a future that many of these people have that has kept them on the streets for 3 months. I mean, not to disparage these people that, want to be heard, but if you have 3 months to sit on the street and protest, and you've been protesting for 3 months, you don't have a lot of other things that are going on. And that's part of the problem. That's a big, big part of it. So I guess we should talk about immigration. I've got thoughts on what the latest from the executive branch via our president, Barack Obama, here in the United States of America. He is the holder of this office, and he gave a speech to the nation, the address. And basically, from what I glean, what I gather from reading the executive action here, this is just going to slow down the deportation process, which is already so slowed down and so ineffective that the millions of people that were slated to be deported back to Mexico will probably not make it there. And we've seen some of the luxury hotel accommodations that we have for the burgeoning populations that are arriving here in mass, ready to work for very little money until they start having to buy Obamacare and all the other things that came along with the Affordable Health Care Act and things that kind of complicate the situation and really complicate the discussion around it. So, I don't want to go back to that. Well, other people have done it. Why are we talking about Barack Obama? Because it's really a moot discussion. 5 million Americans, people living here and working in this country, effectively American people, whether or not they have papers, they call them undocumented workers, illegal aliens, pick your term. I guess it just depends on, how in favor you are of it. If you're not in favor of what's happening with massive amounts of immigration into the country, when the lack of jobs is apparent, we have people that are working, and before I go there, I just want to mention that the amount of people, the illegal aliens that are going to be getting not really amnesty or citizenship, maybe a little bit of a path to citizenship, are not the people that are... They're the people that are being talked about and are being focused on. But when you look at the middle class and even white collar jobs that are being taken away from Americans, many people don't see the Polish engineers. Many people don't see the Eastern Europeans that are coming into this country. And I really was kind of ignorant to it as well until I started working in the tech industry and realizing, hey, how many of these engineers are Indian? How many of these engineers are getting paid next to nothing and doing tech support from, something that's just above a gulag in God only knows where? Those are the people that I'm more concerned with, because those are the people that I will be competing with. Now, if you're a high school kid, it's going to be hard for you to, get a dishwashing gig at, a restaurant. Maybe there's people that are willing to do it for maybe less than you. Although I look at most of the jobs here in our local sector, and not that I'm an expert by any stretch, but just looking at low pay jobs, and almost all of them where I am at are somewhat above minimum wage. And even the people that are here under the most shady of circumstances are getting paid a lot more than minimum wage. So it really becomes, it becomes advantageous only in the sense that they don't have to pay some of the things that we're on the dole for. But when you look at the American people and people that are in those job brackets or in those that would be competing for those jobs, they already are, they're part of the 46 million Americans that are on food stamps. You may be one of them. I've got family, friends that are on them, and I'm only a few months away from maybe even needing them. So, not to disparage anybody that is on the dole, because you're not, part of the minority, unfortunately. And the debate is, of course, why is that? Some people would like to blame immigration or illegal immigration for this. And legal immigration is definitely, I would say, a bigger problem to most of the people that are in the college grad required job sets. Went to the hospital for a whole nother. I'll just put it this way. Every one of the doctors that I've had and my wife and family have had recently, they're not American born. Most of them have accents, and most of them are from other countries. So, it's the doctors, it's the lawyers. Those people you would think would be more upset about this, because those are the 5 million people. The guest workers, people that have documentation, those aren't even the illegal aliens and the people. I mean, I guess they could be, but they're people that have, they have skill sets. They're working at Microsoft. Bill Gates I guess it was about 18 months ago, was complaining about needing more guest worker visa programs because we don't have the pool of people for the tech industry that is required to help Bill Gates. Now, it's a load of crap, and there's plenty of people. I mean, if you look at all of the kids or young adults that are coming out of college, hate to be that old guy, all them kids over there, but all of the young adults that are in debt, coming out of college, that have some kind of technical degree, those are the people that are really having to compete with people from around the world and globalization in general, not just in the United States and people immigrating here, but because technology and global communications is so advanced. Now you don't have to have people necessarily here. Now you can have many jobs that are probably on their way out, but still here today, that can teleconference. A lot of incentives. They're talking about that where I live here in Austin, trying to get people from the Dell Corporation to, teleconference rather than going on the highway every morning because traffic sucks. So there's going to be less and less of that infrastructure, less and less of the people that are required, or the jobs that people do that are required for day-to-day life here on planet Earth. So those are the things that really, I think, are not being looked at, and something like immigration becomes this political football. And most of the discussion is about whether or not illegal immigrants are good or bad for the economy. And that is completely subjective, and it depends on who's benefiting and whether or not you're able to somehow profit from it. It's not advantageous to a lot of people. They would think, it's not going to probably hurt most of your bottom lines out there, but because you're not competing with them, especially people that listen to this podcast. But they are there creating cheap labor, practically slave labor in some cases, in the manufacturing and home building industries, construction industries. So those people, they are seeing some of these jobs, like being a drywaller, something that you could do 20, 30 years ago and make a lot of money at, and do pretty well. Those kind of people, those laborers are finding not just with illegal immigrants or people using cheap labor, because you can find kids, 15-year-olds. Okay, you can find high school kids that will work probably as effectively and smartly as an illegal immigrant that just ran across the border barefoot 2 weeks ago. You could probably get a high school kid to do it for next to nothing and work him under the table. So I saw just as much of that, which people would, oh my God, child labor laws, you're bringing your kids out here. But other people were kind of upset about it because That's taking money out of their children's mouths. Many of the Hispanic, South American immigrants, illegal immigrants. Don't soft pedal it, Owen. You better say they're illegal immigrants. Yes, the illegal immigrants that have immigrated here illegally, they are offended as well because, a lot of them have families. And so they're trying to, raise their children on next to nothing too. So they're just, more of the people that pile into this demographic of completely unable to exist in the United States if it wasn't for the government bailout, the government bennies. And, I don't even know. We look at government numbers, don't even know how many people in this country have to have that. So I think that those are the real debates. It's like what's happening in Ferguson. Just to go back for a moment, the anger towards the police state, the anger towards the aggressive tactics and the dehumanization that people see being exuded by these police, by the state. They are very upset about that. They're upset about mistreatment. They're upset about the government having no accountability and them having no recourse, not being able to do anything about it. I guess that kind of brings us to the main topic of today's show, and that is neo-feudalism. Are we here? Have we made a renaissance out of a caste system? It's a great question. I'm sure most of you have noted the story about the moat making sense. This Tennessee Democrat, Stephen Cohen, coming up with brilliant ideas for how they can protect the White House. Now, moats, they're effective. There's no doubt about it. You put a big moat around something, it's going to isolate you. I remember back just, it seems like a long time ago, but where were we at? 2 years ago when we had the Occupy movement, a lot of protesters went to, I think it was it Morgan Stanley? It's one of the big banks. It doesn't matter. And literally, they have a moat around this bank, and people were trying to get across the moat, and there's security guards out there. And, it's very reminiscent of something that may have happened in the 15th century when you had neo-feudal societies throughout Europe, where you had the plebs, people that do not have a voice, that do not have a vote, that do not really factor into the political decisions that are being made, allegedly for their betterment and in their interest. And that is why there is a just taxation upon the people. The reason that you're taxed to death wherever you live is because it's righteous, it's just, it's godlike, because the government is providing you protection. Now, the mafia and other private, companies like Blackwater can provide you that kind of protection today. And when you look at even Ron Paul back during the presidential election, Blackwater contractors, Triple Canopy, Dime Corp, I've named the names over and over and over again. The list of private companies that provide security for Fortune 500s, CEOs, the political and financial elite, and politicians, the politicos, they have private security forces that, even superstars. Britney Spears, she has a bodyguard. They don't use the police to protect them because obviously if you've got enough money and enough sense, you can even be a mind slave like Britney Spears and realize the police aren't going to protect you. Same thing for a politician. The police are incompetent, and in many cases they are, raping and enslaving people and, killing and assassinating people, and sometimes in their own best interest. They're drug dealers. They rob people in Detroit every once in a while. In places like Maryland, you find some pretty bad stuff. And you can find that in Houston, Texas, or anywhere else. Not to disparage any spot, but point being is that they don't trust the police. They don't trust their own security guards. How bad is it when somebody brings up a moat idea, saying, okay, well, we should put a moat around the White House. And the head of the, the Secret Service? Is that who protects Obama? Some of those guys. The suits with the in-ear monitors and the black sunglasses, the men in black. They think, well, this seems like a great idea. I mean, it's going to take some of the responsibility and, I don't know, awareness that you have to have if you're protecting something away. It's easy. You can put some crocodiles in the moat and, or piranha. I mean, there's a lot of great ideas. Maybe we could just put an electric fence around the White House. Now, the reason that they want to there's a lot of other options, but moats, they're kind of pretty, Everybody likes a water feature. People pay a lot of money for those things in their own backyards. You could have a koi pond. You could have goldfish, or I don't know. I mean, you could have kind of, fishing tournaments, sponsored by Bass Tracker. You could do a lot of things with a moat. A big electrical fence, a big wall, like what they have on the border. It's pretty ineffective, but it's an eyesore. It's not aesthetically pleasing. So anyway, I guess we're kind of seeing the resurgence of this, and I thought it was interesting because you just start looking what is neo-feudalism? Back to basics, new economics. Let's see. I copied two things here and put two things together. So I contorted this note section that I have. And this is the G20. This is neo-feudalism. This is, maybe I'm on the wrong day here. Maybe I need to move back over to this note. That's the right one. I just missed it somewhere in here. Anyway, there's new ideas being put out there that we need new laws to go after certain people that are doing things that we don't want to see. And that's how it was back in the neo-feudal days. You didn't want the pauper class downtown hanging out because, they smell up the place. They're not desirable. So they made laws to outlaw poor people from going into the nice areas. They've made it. They created themselves little gated communities. So, when you look at private security and even private gated communities, those things are expanding across the nation. And that's because all of you rich people that aren't listening to this podcast are probably freaked out about what could happen. And, I see why people are freaking out here. The effing stream went dead. Really, 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 really hate this when this happens. Create, broadcast, stream to. There we go. Just go ahead and do this. I'm not even going to clip it out of the podcast. All right. Stream back up. Streams up. Streams up. Refresh. Live radio. You got to love it. I'd concentrate more on making sure I didn't double down in these notes rather than keeping a live stream going. But I like the live aspect, and it keeps a quorum of people hanging out there, being part of the show. So, and they like to gut check me live, so that's good too. All right, so streams back live. Craig, thanks. Streams up. So yeah, neo-feudalism. Back to neo-feudalism. So you have private security forces and private areas where the rich live, and they've been taking note that the poor people, they're rioting, they're upset. Oh my God, we have to find somewhere to go. So, neo-feudal societies, you had castles, you had huge swaths of land that were off limits, that were privately owned and privately protected. And I think a lot of anarcho-capitalists and people that, kind of miss the point, I think. Ultimate freedom, there's always the way. I look at things three ways. I'd concentrate more on making sure I didn't double down in these notes rather than keeping a live stream going. But I like the live aspect, and it keeps a quorum of people hanging out there, being part of the show. So, and they like to gut check me live, so that's good too. All right, so stream's back live. Craig, thanks. Stream's up. So yeah, neo-feudalism. Back to neo-feudalism. So you have private security forces and private areas where the rich live, and they've been taking note that the poor people, I mean, they're rioting, they're upset. Oh my God, we have to find somewhere to go. So, neo-feudal societies, you had castles, you had huge swaths of land that were off limits, that were privately owned and privately protected. And I think a lot of anarcho-capitalists and people that, kind of miss the point, I think. Ultimate freedom, there's always the way. I look at things three ways. Ultimate freedom, okay? I am a free man. I should not have to worry. When we get to, the topics of immigration, I should not be held back by any border, by any line. We live on a planet. I'm an animal just like you. Nobody tells a fox you can't go over there. Nobody tells a bear where it's okay to be. Now, they might try to cage and fence them because that is what we do. But at the end of the day, I think that really all free human beings should be ultimately free. And at the end of that, the only place where my freedom stops is where maybe your freedom starts. And so when it comes to rights and those being derived from property and what that really means, I think that's where you go to the next step. So complete anarcho-capitalist, libertarian perspective. Governments don't have the authority to draw lines on maps. I really do believe that. But I am also here in 2014 in Texas, and we do have lines, and we do have a map, and we did fight some bloody wars and pay some pretty, let's just say that Napoleon wasn't maybe one of the nicest people in the world, and, we're here, and this is what we have. And so, we should learn from the past, and it was bloody across the board. It was, a progression to where we're at today, although most of you probably think that we're kind of regressing, and I think that that's kind of the point here is that we are. It's neo-feudalism. It's coming back and putting up moats and having these huge, privately controlled, systems. So, I was talking with one of the listeners before the show here, Tuna, who is working with some friends to a buddy of his that are co-founding a communal farm where they're going to, get back to doing what needs to be done. Growing food and figuring out where we've gone wrong, getting their hands dirty, getting back to the soil, getting back to earth. And that's, that I'm so envious. I really wish I could just chunk all of these monitors and the technocracy going on in this studio out the wall sometimes. I just wish I could completely, go off the grid. And you don't have to, go all in on it. But, I thought about that. And it's just, people looking out for their own best interest, wanting to create their own environment and saying, okay, well, maybe I can't control everything on the outside of this wall, but on the inside I can. And so the rich, the elite, the powerful, they have that same kind of idea. But when you look at it, there's a whole different set of rules. When you try to go to their home, let's just say you're a SWAT team. Okay, when you want to go to Joe Biden's home, and you better coordinate that, and he's going to know. Why? Because he lives behind 5 or 6 different walls that local police department, SWAT team, and this is just all hypothetical, would never happen, but put whatever elite prick into this equation, into this scenario, and think about it. I mean, they've got to go through 5 or 6, 7 private fences. They've got private security guards that are they're going to call you and tell you, hey, there's cops here, and they say they have a warrant. They want to come. Oh, hold on. Let me get my lawyers. Maybe I'll fly off in my helicopter. So there's people that they are shielded from the same police brutality, the same kind of injustices that people in Ferguson have to deal with, just because of physical boundaries, physical borders. You know, we have less violence on this side of the border than we do in Mexico and lots of places in South America. And if you've been keeping up with what's happening in Guerrero, where a mayor assassinated 43 students and basically rounded them up, put them in government. They were put in government vehicles, never to be seen again. And, that's not all that strange. Lo and behold, just because they were going to interrupt a bid by his wife and embarrass her. Those are the kind of people that live in a failed state for a variety of reasons. And, there's very little accountability there, and that's why we have people that are trying to escape that kind of tyranny and coming here to the United States. If you look at what's happening in the Ukraine, perfect example. People are being shelled, they're being bombed, they are being, they're being targeted by the now 1-year-old. We're celebrating the Maidan, the anniversary of it, by Washington-backed neo-Nazis in Kiev. As far as I can tell, a junta, a coup occurred. You have bankers and you have the financial support, even if it's not militarily, and it is militarily, and the CIA and other advisors are on the ground in Ukraine, and the private contractors that are protecting the CEO of IBM, the CEO of Samsung. I'll give you a story real quick before we go there. But you know what? I don't want to go off on too many tangents. But the thing is that those people have to they have to make a decision. Okay, now they've shut down the banks. Okay, so it's an economic war. They're shutting off their retirement systems. They're shutting off their pensions. And this is how the state is attacking those in the East, the Eastern Ukrainians, because they are dependent upon the government. And so the Chocolate King this week, Poroshenko, he gave a little speech and saying, this is how we're going to attack these people. These people will not have schools. Their children will not go to school. They will have to educate their children in basements while we shell them. They will not have banks. They will not have pensions. All these people that have worked for the Ukrainian government and paid taxes because they don't believe that the current government is legitimate, and they are fighting back. They are going to lose everything they have. So if you're Ukrainian, you've got some choices. You can either line up with the neo-Nazis, and God only knows who the U.S. will end up supporting. I mean, even if you like who's there now, don't worry. If they ever decide to get a spine, a backbone, the U.S. will ouster them as well, and you're going to have something else. So you can go with that. You can just bow your head and worship the state and pay allegiance, or at least lip service to the Kiev junta, or like hundreds of thousands, even maybe they're saying up to 1 million Ukrainians have now fled to Russia. Now, if you're a Russian and the economy's not doing too well for you, you might be a little offended by this. All these damn Ukrainians, they speak Russian, they're practically us, they're just as skilled. I mean, it's even a worse situation than what we have here today with the Hondurans and the children and the refugees from all of the failed mistakes of globalization and NAFTA. And, there's just a litany, a laundry list of reasons why people want to escape South America to a place, like Ferguson, Missouri, which seems like, the government might shoot you in the face if you rob a store. That's just how it is in most places. Let's be honest. Most of our friends around the world and other quote-unquote democracies, if you steal something, it doesn't matter if you've got a gun. They'll kill you. And, it's only here that we get so offended. Oh, my God, the cops would kill a kid that robbed a store. Go to Spain. I've seen Spanish cops shoot at pickpockets. Spain is big for pickpockets. Go to Barcelona. They will kill you for stealing because it cuts into their business, and one of their biggest businesses is tourism. Okay, so pickpockets, they get manhandled on a daily basis. I've seen it firsthand. It's an example of why, we're so offended by some things. And of course, because it relates to you and you're the one that's suffering under it. But when you look at a global perspective of so-called alleged democracies, what's going on here seems pretty good compared to other places. Going to the United States seems a lot better than, maybe living under, a Venezuelan government at the moment. I mean, if you're in Venezuela, you have to go get fingerprinted to buy to buy groceries, toilet paper. Everything's being rationed. Everything's being managed by the government. And the government's only solution is to take more control. And, of course, blame the West. The West has plenty of, there's plenty of blame to go around, but you can't blame the West for really, really bad policies and decisions that you're making, although they do, because it's very easy. So, when I look at what's happening in the Ukraine right now, the celebrations of the Maidan and all, talk about something that is completely off the radar. They're saying some of these UN reports, take them for what they're worth, but up to 100,000 people have died. 100,000 people have died. Why? Because the last guy didn't want to make a deal with the EU. Because USAID, Pierre Omidyar, and John Kerry and Victoria Nuland and the Kagan brothers decided that Ukraine was ripe for regime change because we want to go after Vladimir Putin, because we want to be the new power supporting Europe and the isolation of Russia to break that whole energy triangle. Yeah, obviously. And is that really going to pay off? Look at the Kiev government. Look at what's happening to the isolation, or basically the ostracization of the U.S. dollar, in new huge deals that are being made in Russia and China. Another case in point, we have the rival of the Panama Canal. If you want an interesting story, look into Panama. The Panama Deception will tell you all about the neocons and George Bush and Don Rumsfeld and Cheney's plans for regime change. And, it's the playbook, or it's the plan that was used in Iraq that didn't work very well, apparently. But what really was striking, I watched a documentary. You watch it, PBS has pretty brutal realities around the creation of the Panama Canal. And, we ousted democratically elected leader there that was in opposition because, it's business. It really is business. And the amassed amounts of foreign slaves the U.S. brought in, and the French, that's why you have, they call them Chinos. You have the Chinese South Americans, and sometimes you'll see people, illegal immigrants and others around, that look Chinese, and you're like, why are all these Chinese Mexicans here? There's a lot of black Mexicans. What happened with this? That's because they brought in tons of slaves to build the Panama Canal, and they changed the culture. Okay, they massively integrated the culture because of this business deal, and for better or worse, it's just I guess now in retrospect, it's just a turn of events that made a very diverse and multicultural community, but they didn't bring local business to the local people. Okay, and this is pretty much case in point. Even the railroads that were built in this country, and most of the infrastructure that's being built today, has always been built on slave labor. And you say, oh man, America, you evil bastards, you build everything on slave labor. It's true, but so does everyone else. And slave labor is nothing new, and as far as I can tell, it's gone on since the beginning of time. And, well, there's still cops enslaving people and people that are living in some kind of enslaved state here on planet Earth. And when you look at the college kids that are going to be competing with illegal and visa-holding workers here and around the world, they're in a state of debt servitude as well. Most of you are. I am. We're all in some kind of state of economic enslavement, although we can absolve ourselves by leaving this country or moving along, and that's what a lot of people are trying to do. So that's why I'm not so offended, I guess, by the illegal immigration debate, because I look at people want to get out of where they're at because their government has completely failed, and that's why it's so important that the United States, although for all of its indiscretions and dirty deeds, which I guess are not that unique to any country, we still do have a little bit more accountability. And that's hard to say, but we do have a little bit more accountability, even the police officers in Ferguson, than places in Mexico and places in the Middle East, and where beheadings happen on almost a daily basis. I mean, when you look at politics and politicos and the steering of discussions, you have to look at what's happening in Mexico and say, my God, these people have beheadings every day. And guess what? The government does not care. The U.S. does not focus on the beheadings, the gang cartels, the massive amounts of corruption the U.S. continues to fund by proxy by giving money and U.S. aid to the Mexican government, which is completely compromised. And who's in charge? Carlos Slim and the boys, and all of the people all of these barons that became very, very powerful and very rich because of NAFTA, because of the North American Free Trade Agreement. So if you don't learn from history, then you're doomed to repeat it, and that's what I think is so bad about the discussion, and that's why it's so frustrating to me, is because everybody's focusing on the people that have the least impact in our society. The people that are willing to work for absolutely nothing. Those are the people that we are so worried about. And they'd love for you to focus on them all day long. People that aren't even competing for your jobs. They're not the ones demanding you pay crazy amounts of taxes to support them. Okay? That's the silly dichotomy. Okay? They're not the ones making the laws, obviously. Okay? They're not the ones that are providing the welfare state for themselves. But we focus on these people because they're victims of corporate exploitation. Okay. I guess it's easy for politicians to blame them too, because they don't vote, they don't have papers. So, it's low-hanging fruit. It's really, really sad when people, kind of miss sight of the reality. And that's what I've been noticing at least the last few months, where we're so worried about ISIS. They beheaded another person. Wow. Big deal. I think there was 40. Well, I had the article up on Blacklisted News. But, the beheadings are pretty much uncounted, other than by activists and individuals that are appalled by it and think it's inhumane in Saudi Arabia. But tell you what, they're giving us a hell of a deal on the oil. But people, they're so worried about ISIS. They're on the other side of the border. If we don't shut down the border, they're going to come and kill you. And they're going to be working with the disenfranchised illegal immigrants to, steal your children's jobs and to kill your babies. People buy into that. Oh, my God. People, all of the panic. Here's a few of the headlines I was looking at on the Drudge Report, and I mentioned this briefly, I think, on the last Doomcast. But Rick Perry says Texas might sue. Cruz says Obama's not a monarch. DHS says brace for new surge of illegals. So the problem is that you have lots of criminals, and the people in Mexico, especially, that have the money and the wherewithal, the ability to come to this country, many of which are criminals, because it costs a lot of money to come to America. It really does. If you get deported and you have to pay a coyote, just, somewhere like Laredo, Nuevo Laredo, or El Paso, or, I would say probably the I-35 corridor is probably one of your best bets in Texas to get up here. You have to pay upwards of $5,000-$6,000 just to get a ride through the checkpoint. It's a big deal. It costs a lot of money. And maybe that price is going to go down because there's less risk. Those are the only things that I can see that, that are actual arguments, okay? Because there's less risk. There's less chance that you're going to be deported. That brings prices down for people that want to come into this country. Now, a lot of them try to make the trek themselves. And good luck running through Arizona or places in Southern California. Good luck. You might want to get caught because hundreds, if not thousands, of people die trying to make that trip into this country. And I mean, that puts a lot of perspective on how bad it really is. And so I guess I don't feel as offended by the illegal immigrants wanting to come here because I understand how horribly, badly, and destructively we have used the Mexican and South American governments, and how much of that blame is placed on Western policy. I don't blame everything on the U.S. government, but policies and decisions of people that held power in government, yeah, absolutely. You can't not blame them. You can't ignore what they have done. But that doesn't mean that you can indict every person ever that's in America. Really get sick of that too. Oh, well, America, they want to enslave everybody. It's like, okay, well, I don't know where you live, but that's kind of what people have done to one another. So if you can keep a lot of the rhetoric and the, nationalism and anti-nationalism out of the debate, then you can see things a lot clearer. People feel offended because they think it's hurting America. These illegal immigrants are hurting America, as if this is hurting you, as if you are somehow part of this system. And yeah, you live within it. It's a construct of legal laws that hold you and, in some cases, the government accountable, and that creates a system that we can use to at least try to right some wrongs. You can, if somebody steals your property or burns your house down, you have a legal framework in this country to go after them. Other places, not so much. Other places, you don't have nearly the same amount of bureaucracy. That's what we have too much of, and that's what I think has helped really shield police, like in the case of Ferguson, from justice, because you have the bureaucracy, you have people that have created and engendered an environment where you have warrior cops that believe it's them against the people. So I kind of broke down on the Doomcast how martial law, state of emergency, how that becomes a military doctrine, and you have the central command that takes over the government. Now, the FBI also has intervened in Ferguson, and they've sent 100 agents. What they are doing and what their role, what they will be instructing the police, or if they will be instructing police, will be interesting. And I kind of had this debate with Charlie, and we talked about, well, what's better? Which would be worse? The Ferguson cops or the National Guard? And we both, unfortunately came to the realization that the National Guard might actually treat the situation more professionally. They might not, be so apt to stick a rifle in somebody's face because they have better training. They understand, they're just held to a higher account, and they have to go through more ethics training and things of the like. I mean, even when I was in the military, we never, talked about enslaving people and, shooting citizens. I mean, even if you practice that or practice for, I mean, you've seen some, if you haven't seen them, they're all over the place, but, some of these scenarios and role-playing situations where the military police are engaging protesters who are upset because they don't have food or because, there's a run on the bank. All of these scenarios that seem very real and very plausible in, modern day life. Even then, I mean, they're still better than what you get in Ferguson, Missouri, where, you just have these roided up thugs pointing guns in people's faces, just, treating people and calling them animals. So, when you look at things as a better or worse, or which would be more ideal, you're on a path to a never-ending discussion about what's more fair and who does a better job in these kind of situations. I think that it's funny because people are like, oh my God, they're preparing to engage the people. And it's like, well, wouldn't you hold them incompetent if they weren't preparing to engage the people? I've got an interesting article that's on the front page of Blacklisted News right now. Private military contractors hired to move guns and gold out of Ferguson. Business owners in St. Louis, Missouri area have hired private military contractors to transport guns and gold, fearing their shops will be targeted by looters if a grand jury does not indict Darren Wilson, the police officer who shot and killed Michael Brown in the St. Louis County suburb of Ferguson. So if you're outside of the U.S., might not be such a big story for you guys, but here, everyone likes to watch violence. Okay, people that are appalled by it want to see it. In a world where, where people are able to get things on demand, people are more apt to see this, and they want to see what's happening. And that's why the federal government helped the Ferguson police actually institute a no-fly zone that was not in the interest of the people, as they said. Complete lie. I mean, it should be, somebody should be fired. Somebody should be indicted for instituting a no-fly zone to keep the media, keep the world's view, the transparency of the situation away from you and I. Ultimately, that's where they want this to go. I mean, when you look at what's happening in the UK, censoring extreme material. Is it extreme to see the police beating down children, using chemical weapons against them? I think that's pretty extreme. Government might not want you seeing that. That might get you questioning where your tax dollars are going and questioning what you blindly support every time you stand up at a football game and let's honor the first responders. Let's honor these people. They're our heroes. Everybody worship them. You might, think about it a little bit more. You might not be so quick to give support and go all in on some of these initiatives. So, I don't know what more I can really lend to the situation and really the commentary that's, happening. I think that this is definitely a sign of things to come. A lot of people are looking at this and think, well, this is going to become more regular. This is going to become more normal. And, that's completely dependent upon how the economy does. That's why it's so important to not buy into a lot of these ridiculous plans and notions that we hear out of government, because it's not about, it's so much more about the economy and about accountability than it really is about a single murder of a person. Just like the Trayvon Martin, Zimmerman hype thing. And that's what I kind of feel this is going to be ultimately is, I've said ultimately too many times, is going to be, a lot of hype and, the fear of race riots, the fear of people just going bat as crazy, and it'll turn out to be just another day in the empire. I don't know. People will riot over a basketball game. They really will. People will riot over a football or soccer match in the UK. I mean, people will tear down stands. I mean, if you get enough people hyped up about any kind of event, and it doesn't even have to be about cops and protesters. Take cops and protesters out and just put two teams or a bunch of I don't know, NASCAR fans out there, people will storm and riot over things that are pretty trivial. I mean, the outcome of a football match in the UK, probably not that big of a deal. Most of you Americans listening to this podcast, can't fathom why it's such a risk to go to one of these events. People stab each other. A couple of years back, they were selling these stab-proof jerseys. I think it was for Manchester United. When I was in Spain and they were playing Manchester United, the fans were there. They were setting cars on fire. And I remember this bartender telling me, he's like, "You got to get out of here. You're going to die." And I was like, "Excuse me?" He's like, "Yeah, you look like a Manchester fan." He's like, I suggest you leave right now. And it wasn't even an hour, and people were burning the house down. Saw it happen in Turkey and Izmir as well. Same thing. People were picking up cars and spinning in them because their team had lost. And how corrupt is the FIFA World Cup system? I mean, in Qatar, they are building a World Cup dome there with slaves, and everybody knows about it. Everybody knows about it. It's mainstream news, though most of the American people probably haven't heard about it. But it's a big deal over there, and especially if you're in Qatar and these other countries that the U.S. Oh, we love these guys. They're not as bad as ISIS. They're worse. They're way worse. They kill more people. They enslave more people. They have a larger impact, a larger reach with their global evil, and people just don't care that much. And that's why it's so hard. I'm sure some of you can understand this or relate, where people, they want to talk about ISIS, and it's like, oh, even if it's not the government's creation, the U.S. government, we can still blame most of it on Paul Bremer and Kissinger's bad policies and bad ideas after the Iraq War. Not that it was a great idea, but it's just systemic failure after bad decision after systemic failure, to the point where most of you and I think, my God, if it isn't a conspiracy, these people are just that dense and just that full of themselves, just that compartmentalized. Maybe they are, because they're living behind multiple walls. They're living in a world where they have no worries because they have private security. They don't have to worry about the things that people in Ferguson, Missouri have to worry about. They have to worry about being targeted by the police and maybe unjustly killed, and it happens all the time. You're in the wrong place, wrong time. That could end your life. You say the wrong thing to the wrong cop, that could end your life quickly. If you're a political elite, you don't have these problems. You get pulled over by the cop. Joe Biden gets pulled over. It's not a big deal. Joe Biden's son gets busted doing cocaine, gets kicked out of the Navy. And he was there. He got his officer ship, became commissioned at 40, which was, I thought was a highlight as to why, he was already a failure. If at 40 you're joining the military in any capacity, things have gone wrong. You've made lots of bad decisions. Oh, man, I'm 40 years old. Maybe I should just go to the military. Maybe Uncle Joe can give me a job there. And now he's working with an investment group that, how qualified is this guy? He's working with an investment group that's, an energy fracker extractor in Ukraine. I mean, give me a break. You get kicked out, I get kicked out, man. And you probably get a dishonorable discharge. Probably wouldn't be able to vote ever again. Probably would be almost unhireable. You can't work at McDonald's with a dishonorable discharge. No. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. So there's definitely a neo-feudal caste system that I think is becoming more apparent, and people becoming very upset about it. Unfortunately, not enough of them are seeing the bigger picture and really some of the bigger threats. Okay, you're much more likely to be killed by a Mexican cartel gang member, be initiated by somebody that's assassinating somebody for MS-13. And that's so rare. That's so rare that I hate to use the example because I don't want people, oh yeah, that's what we should fear. We should really fear that. Because it's so remotely plausible, feasible that you will ever, I mean, the chances are so slim that you'll ever have to worry about any of that personally, that it shouldn't even be, a dinner conversation. Same thing with ISIS. I mean, what are they going to do? Are they going to kill Assad? Are they going to take over and start a nation state? Well, if they did, it'd be pretty easy to go after them. We can't have them creating a nation state. Where would they create it? And tell me how that wouldn't be aligned or in line with some of the aspirations of U.S. energy companies, U.S. policy. Wouldn't that make it easier? Wouldn't it make it easier to deal with some group rather than having them be some rogue Al-Qaeda type group that is national or global? Wouldn't it be better to have a nation state where you could just boom and just, hit them all? But, average people don't think about that. They're like, oh, man, I can't. What would they do if they had a nation state? I don't know. Would they go the way of Iran and build nuclear weapons? I know some of you are like, oh, Doug, they're not building nuclear weapons. I don't know what they're building. I have no idea. I don't really care, to be completely honest, because there's lots of crazy zealot people that have nuclear weapons these days, and the world has rolled on, and nobody wants to use them because they're just they get you, as I've said over and over again, they get you a seat at the big boy table. Nobody would care about North Korea and all of the slaves and the horrible atrocities that are going on there. If there was money to be made, or if there was money to be made. Well, there is. Let me rephrase. If there wasn't money to be made, if there wasn't nuclear weapons there, probably no one would care, and they would have been ousted. You wouldn't have the Hermetic Kingdom if they didn't have nuclear weapons. The only reason that they're able to exist and do what they do is because they have nuclear weapons. So, as horrible a country as I believe North Korea is, it's still in existence because they have nuclear weapons. So you can glean one thing from what they have done, and that is been able to protect themselves. If you look at most countries that don't have nuclear weapons, you never know who's going to be in charge of the government next week. You never know what's going to happen. And, that nuclear weapons keep stability. But people are so afraid that they're going to get these weapons and they're going to blow up Israel. Why? Why would they? ISIS? They don't want to go after Israel? Al-Qaeda? You would think they would go after Israel or Jordan and the other supporters and the people that are profiting from the infidels and bringing weapons into the Middle East and funding these extremist groups. You would think that would make sense. But obviously they don't. But nobody will apply that logic to the Iranian nuclear program. If they had nuclear weapons, do you think they'd blow up Israel? Nobody else seems to care. Nobody else is that interested. They're more interested in, most of the fanatics at least, in creating their own little wild utopia and their own little cult. But if they weren't so destabilized and these countries actually had stronger central governments, then you wouldn't have these kind of issues. If you didn't, you look at places like Ukraine, even Russia. The gun laws are very extreme. It's very hard to protect yourself from the state. The idea in Iran of you having the right to bear arms, that is not on the table. They are not big fans of that. And I guess I'll wrap it up with a Press TV story. These guys wanted to have us on. And one of the first questions, Press TV is Iranian national news, national propaganda. It's their version. And, they have a right to it. We have our own propaganda outlets, all of them, CBS, NBC, turn on the nightly news, and they're telling you to hide in fear from ISIS. So if that's not propaganda, I don't know what is. But anyway, so they have a screener. The guy, he says, I'm a screener, and blah, blah, blah. First question is, how do you feel about arms? And I don't know. I don't know how I feel about arms. What do you mean? He's like, firearms, the Second Amendment. And I was like, well, I think you have the right to have a firearm. The government believes they have a right to have firearms. Police officers use firearms to protect your freedoms, right? At least that's the line. So why shouldn't you? Do they do a better job than you would? Do you trust them more than you? And they did not dig that. They were not big fans of telling the Iranian people they should arm themselves against the government. The only reason that it's not that you're going to change the government's policies or laws, or having a gun actually gives you more tangible freedom, but it does allow you to protect your rights right up until the point that you no longer exist on this plane. And I know we've gone all over the place here with this podcast today, and I want to thank all of you that have made it to this point for just kind of entertaining me. But you get back right down to these topics, these divisive wedge issues that are going to be constantly talked about and exploited for the next 2 years running up to the 2016 election. And if it's not Obamacare, it's going to be the illegal immigrants. If it's not them, it's going to be gun control and having more control over your guns. And I can't say it enough. It's never about gun control. Nobody I've ever met has said that we should have gun control. They just want certain people to have more guns and certain other people not to have guns. People either want the state to have more guns because they fear people, and they fear the state less than other people. And that's what it is. I mean, if you're one of these diehard liberals, you believe, well, if we can get guns out of people's hands, there's going to be less violent crime. I can give you hundreds, if not thousands, of examples of where cops, people you think should have guns, have committed crimes against unarmed people. So the question always becomes, do you believe that they are better equipped to protect your liberty? If that was true, then the Fortune 500 CEOs, the corporate and political elite, the financial elite, the central bankers, the Federal Reserve would not have their own police departments and private security. They didn't have people, even they take it a step further. They don't even trust themselves to protect themselves. They trust others, and it's not the police. They trust other people to take care of them and to provide their security. That's what it always comes down to. That's the debate. Who gets the guns? Nobody says, hey, we should just get rid of all the nuclear weapons. No. Nobody's trying to do that. You're not going to find any anti-nuclear lobbies that are getting much attention, much federal or political action committee funding. You're just not going to find that. Nobody thinks, man, the government should have less guns. When we spend billions and billions of dollars on weapons that end up through the 1033 program right back in the hands of American government or police officers, and God only knows who, all these agencies. Now that the USDA, they are armed up and manned up. You're like, wow. I mean, is there really that much? Is there that much crime? Are there that many different federal agencies that have to have shotguns? Apparently there are. So all of these people that continue to say, well, you're so dangerous with a gun. Well, who's in danger? It's obviously not you. It's obviously, really, people out here that in the regular world that have to contend with firearms. And it's probably just as many of those people that, that are victims of gun violence would be victims that, there's an equal amount of victims that are victims of the police state. Look at Ferguson, Missouri. You can find people that are being victimized by others, by the poor, by the crazy, by the government. And, those people, they don't want to protect themselves. They just believe that the government can do a much, much better job. All right, I've rambled enough on that topic. I'm sure you all agree. I want to thank, I got to thank one person here who sent in $75, and I want to give her proper accreditation because, yeah, I see the stream died. Thanks there, 509. I tried to start it back up, and I think it's running here. It's sometimes hit or miss. Welcome to my world. What was Ivana in London, and they gave in $75. They actually sent it twice. for an early Christmas present to me. And so I want to thank you for that. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Should have just looked this name up. Just want to get the name right. I'm sure I know exactly who it is, but I have made huge mistakes in the past, giving wrong people credit. Oh, yes. And that was the other aspect. I wanted to bring up the link there that was given. Lila and Ivana sent this. It says, "Hi, Doug. Just wanted to make sure that you received the $75 two times as an early Christmas gift. You only mentioned one on the Doomcast, so I don't know if PayPal made a mistake. They did not. I just did not realize it, and I want to thank you for both of the donations. We don't really make money off of this podcast, and for the most part, most of the, awareness campaigns that we do, the amount of money that goes into actually producing these podcasts and paying Spreaker to run this subpar stream and doing the upgrades and all of the things that the cost paying for those that go into the show. We usually break about even with your support. We don't take commercial advertisers that want to waste your time trying to get you to buy products that you probably don't need. If you really needed them, you would already have them. If they were that great, you probably got them, or somebody else is already telling you about them. I think it's rude and in this day and age, almost pointless to censor yourself to be compromised by corporate interests for something that should be, very transparent. And that's the mission of this show. If you find value in it, you can give us a financial contribution. You can let other people know about it, the rants and raves. If you enjoy them, share them with others. They are free. We operate under Creative Commons. That means that you can do really anything with it. You can take these shows, sell them if you wanted to. You can make T-shirts. It doesn't matter. And if you can benefit yourself by doing that, that's better than even supporting the show, because you're supporting yourself through the show. And so those things pay dividends. That's what, so many people do miss. And I know I'm running a little bit long and we've jumped all over the place. What's new, right? If you listen to this podcast, that's pretty much standard operating procedure. But just thinking about this, it really dovetails with my plea for your support. And that is SOPA. The Surveillance Reform Bill is back. And of course, the NSA is in battles in Utah. They're still trying to shut the water down to the U.S. NSA spy base center there, where they're going to have huge quantum computers to the tune of billions of dollars worth of equipment that are going to be needing so much electricity. Let's talk about the carbon output. Nobody's going to talk about that. None of the lefties are going to talk about the military's footprint, the agency's footprint on carbon. But when you look at the cooling systems required for these servers, pretty extensive. So the NSA is out there, and they're trying to get Congress to push for legislation requiring making basically encryption illegal, and they are trying their best to push forward a stealth internet tax. And if you haven't heard about this, they're actually talking about through the and this is the other big missed point of net neutrality, is that net neutrality, everyone says, is what we have now. We have net neutrality. Al Franken and Boehner, which are two politicos here in the U.S., have been going back and forth, and he's been trying to educate the Republicans on net neutrality via Twitter, and people buy into this. God, it drives me nuts. But so basically he's saying, well, what we have now is net neutrality, and all this would do is codify it and say, look, it's illegal for AT&T to throttle you when you want to watch Netflix or whatever service, whether it's Blacklisted radio or maybe some extremist material that you're not supposed to by the government. The FCC is going to be there to regulate that, and they have to have teeth. They have, if you're going to have a law, there's no point in having it if you don't have the ability, the power to enforce. And that is one of the missed points. The other point is that even during these committee meetings, if you've taken note, they're talking about needing a new tax to fund the FCC expanding its role into instituting and being able to maintain net neutrality. Now, good news, folks. Good news, sort of. If you look at the FDA, you know how much money they take in. Oh, they got guns. They got a police department. They got a private security force. They've deputized themselves, and they all got a bunch of rusty stars on their chests, and they feel good about it, and they hassle organic farmers. They'll probably pop up on your land if you're, daring to sell your neighbor some, unpasteurized milk. I mean, they're there to really, bother those that aren't, that they're really an extension of big agro. That's who pays for them. And so they go after the people that don't have the finances, the lawyers, and the ability to fight them. And then they say, look at what we've done. We've been surveilling this farmer for 5 years, and he's been selling milk across state lines, and nobody died, nothing happened. It was all, it was all voluntary. Everybody was okay. Nobody was forced into anything, and they'll find those people. But the FDA only inspects about 1% of all food that comes into this country. 1%. They don't have time to do that. They got time to harass you, your friends, people that are making some claim about their magical, super silver. How dare you say that's doing anything good? I mean, and the irony is that how many times has the FDA approved drugs with no oversight that end up killing, tens of thousands of people and maiming them? I mean, how many blood pressure drugs have gone through? And we could even get into psychotropics and other pseudo-scientific drugs that, are definitely a plight on the people. Hydrocodone. I mean, tens of thousands of people, over 10,000 people a year OD on actual government, doctor-approved, AMA-certified, doctor-approved drugs that have been prescribed or prescribed to somebody that sells them and others abuse. It's a huge racket. But the FDA is doing a horrible job. The USDA doing a horrible job. They don't have the ability, and what they do is they take a lot of money and they grandstand and they buy off consultants or they get bought off by consultants who give them information about new laws that are somehow helping Cargill and the like, and they're just completely ineffective. Okay, completely ineffective. This is, I'll say it for the 15th time, one of the missed points of the debate on net neutrality is that even if you give the government all of these powers, new powers, you make it a utility, the internet that is, they're not going to be able to do anything about it. They haven't been able to go after these telecommunications companies, and in very, very rare form or few cases, even if it is some kind of egregious, raping of people financially, and AT&T, you are guilty, charging erroneous things on your bill and charging you maybe hundreds of dollars a year. Nobody goes to jail. You steal hundreds of dollars from your next door neighbor, it's probably not going to go very well. Still hundreds of dollars, or even a cigar from a convenience store in Ferguson, Missouri, it's not going to go very well for you. So, that's the, I think, gist of this show is that, people are just having all the wrong discussions. People are, and I'm included, the aforementioned show last week, I've been gullible. I have been gullible in my life. I have bought into, the stupid things that people buy into. And so we just have to keep on hoping that people are going to see through some of this stuff. And that's why I'm going to continue to do the show. That's why I am so thrilled that some of you, at least a few of you, have continued to support it, and thank you for doing so. My name's Doug Owen. I am the senior editor of Blacklisted News. You can find all of the news headlines and other things that I find to be important, interesting, and share-worthy there at blacklistednews.com. Of course, we produce shows and everything from our iTunes channel to YouTube. You can find there at blacklistedradio.com, where you can find all of the shows. I want to mention that as well. So we're on a lot of different formats and platforms. So pick one, listen to the show, share it with your friends. Until next week, my friends, take care.